The tea was warm in my hands, but my fingers stayed cold. Chamomile with a hint of orange peel, Jolene said, her voice floating too high. Made it just for you, Mom. She held her own cup, delicately, like a stage prop. I didn't smile back. I just nodded and looked down at the steam rising from the blue-rimmed mug she handed me, my favorite, somehow already out on the table before I arrived. Her mother sat beside me, too. Still, too watchful. Her gaze bounced between Jolene and me, lips pressed together, like she was waiting for a cue. Richard was on the couch by the tree, fiddling with the lights that had been glowing fine a moment ago. He didn't look up once. His cup sat beside him, untouched. I didn't think. I just moved. My hand reached over and gently swapped mine for Jolene's mother's. She didn't notice. They all carried on. Jolene's mother made some polite comment about the snow. Richard adjusted the thermostat. Jolene turned on the fireplace channel and offered me a scone I didn't touch. 30 minutes passed. Then her mother stood up and staggered. One hand reached out, grasped air, and she crumpled to the rug like a marionette whose strings had snapped. Jolene shrieked a beat too late. Richard ran to her. Jolene stood frozen, eyes wide, arms limp by her sides. Then she dropped to her knees and called her name, voice trembling like an aftershock. I didn't move. I just watched. Paramedics came. People cried. Jolene fussed and paced and filled the room with noise. But no one, not once, asked how I was feeling. I sat there quiet and steady, the same way I had all morning. And no one remembered which cup was supposed to be mine. The living room smelled like burnt cinnamon and leftover panic. Jolene moved around the kitchen with forced ease, humming to herself as if yesterday hadn't happened. "She's fine," she said, waving a hand. My mom just skipped breakfast. Probably stress. It's been a busy week. Richard sipped his coffee and nodded too quickly. Holidays do that to people. I sat at the kitchen island watching Jolene's hands. They didn't tremble, but her jaw clenched every time she poured. When she slid a mug toward me, I reached for it. Slowly, eyes on hers. "Thanks," I said, then set it aside without a sip. Jolene's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You look tired, Mom. You sure you're okay? I'm fine." Richard leaned forward, tilting his head. "Have you felt scatterbrained lately? Like forgetting things? Feeling off?" I turned to him. "Not particularly. Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "No reason. Just, you seemed a little out of it yesterday." My heartbeat slowed. Not sped up, slowed. Like it was stepping back, observing. They were planting seeds. Quiet ones. "I think I'll head home," I said, standing. "Thank you for the tea and the holiday." Jolene hurried toward me. "You shouldn't drive, Mom. Why not rest a bit? Just stay another night." I was already reaching for my coat. I prefer my own bed. The drive back to Brookfield was silent. The radio stayed off. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly, but not out of fear. Out of clarity. When I got home, I made plain toast and left it on the plate. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off the morning still thick in my head. Their faces, that smile, the way Richard kept glancing at Jolene for cues, like he didn't trust himself to say the right things. I opened the side drawer of my buffet, pulled out the key, and unlocked the old file cabinet. Inside a folder Jolene had handed me last spring. Just insurance updates, she'd said, sliding it over like it was nothing. But it wasn't insurance. It was a durable power of attorney signed, stamped, and notarized, with her name listed as sole controller of everything I owned if I was ever declared mentally unfit. I held the paper steady, though everything inside me went cold. Daniel Westbrook adjusted his glasses as he read slowly, methodically. His office smelled faintly of old leather and paper, quiet, steady things that had no need to deceive. "This is comprehensive," he finally said, tapping the document. "It gives her control over your bank account's property and medical decisions if you're ever deemed mentally unfit. I sat straight-backed in the chair across from him. And that determination, who makes it? Initially, a doctor. But if there's enough behavioral evidence, even a concerned family member can trigger an inquiry, especially if no one contests it. My mouth felt dry. Daniel. I didn't know that's what I signed. He looked at me for a long second. Do you recall the day she gave this to you? I nodded. Easter. She called it insurance updates. Said hospitals were asking for them now. I didn't even read past the first page. He opened a legal pad. I'm going to ask you a few things just to be thorough. What day is it? Tuesday. What's my name? Daniel Westbrook. You've been our lawyer since 1987. He smiled slightly. And what's your current mortgage status? Paid in full. 12 years ago. He nodded, satisfied. I'll start the revocation paperwork today. I left his office with a folder tucked under my arm and something heavier tucked behind my ribs, the sharp, sudden understanding that this had not been a whim. This had been months, years coming. Back home, I pulled out my household ledger, the same one Harold and I had used since our first Christmas in this house. I flipped through the pages. $600 for Jolene's car repairs. $1, $200 for a kitchen contractor who never finished. $3,000 for Richard's urgent business opportunity. And then buried between entries like groceries and utilities, $18,000 last spring. A short-term loan, Jolene had called it. There'd been tears, promises. Not a penny returned. My handwriting was steady. Too steady. Like I'd trusted the act of recording more than the act of questioning. I closed the book and made a list of every account I owned. That night, I slept with Daniel's folder beside me. Not because I was afraid, because I was finally awake. Christine Park met me at the front desk with a warm but professional smile. Mrs. Broderick, she said, leading me toward her office. What can I help you with today? I sat down, keeping my hands folded. I need a full review of my account. Activity logs, authorizations, withdrawals, everything, and I want to know who has access. Christine's expression didn't change, but she clicked efficiently through her system. Her eyes paused at one screen, then flicked back. There's a recurring monthly withdrawal, she said carefully. $700. It's been transferring automatically to an external account under Jolene Mitchell. My stomach didn't drop. It tightened. Cancel it immediately, I said. And flag my account. No changes unless I'm here in person. She nodded. Understood. Then she turned to the printer and asked, Would you like me to print the last 18 months of statements? Yes, please. She handed me the thick stack 10 minutes later. I left without saying another word, stepping out into air so cold it burned my lungs. But I didn't flinch. I let it settle me. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't stress or crossed wires. This was theft. At home, I cleared the dining table and laid out the pages side by side. The pattern jumped out immediately. Charges labeled family support, a $2,000 emergency withdrawal, a furniture store I'd never stepped into, a payment to a medical supply company I'd never heard of, Jolene's name again and again, my initials on nothing, not a single line linked to Richard, not a single question from him either. That betrayal cut deeper, the kind that lets someone else do the taking while they pretend not to know what's already gone. I circled each questionable charge with a red pen methodically. Margin notes, page flags, a full file for Daniel by the end of the night. Then I brewed a fresh cup of tea from a sealed box, sat at the kitchen table, and drank in silence. Not for comfort, for clarity. And because the next step would need both. 3 days passed before she showed up. No text, no warning, just the sound of her car door shutting in my driveway. When I opened the front door, Jolene stood there holding a warm casserole wrapped in a dish towel, her smile bright enough to crack. Mom, she said, lifting the dish as if it were peace itself. You've been acting distant. We're worried. I didn't step aside. I didn't even touch the casserole. I simply rested my hand on the edge of the doorframe and watched her. Her concern felt practiced, like a script she hadn't rehearsed quite enough times. "I'm fine," I said. She tilted her head. "Christmas was a lot. You seemed overwhelmed. Did you feel confused that morning? Maybe lightheaded?" Her eyes searched mine, hoping I would hand her something. An admission. A slip the smallest hint of frailty. "I felt clear," I said. She blinked. "Just once. Mom, maybe you misunderstood the insurance paperwork. We were just trying to help you manage things." I revoked the document, I said. The smile on her face flickered and died. She tried to gather it again, but it wouldn't stay. "Oh," she said, lightly. "Well, maybe you read it wrong. It wasn't meant to be stressful. We were trying to take a little off your plate." I let her words settle between us before I answered. "There were withdrawals, regular ones. My bank showed me." Her voice sharpened. "We talked about those." "No," I said. "You talked. I trusted. That won't happen again." She crossed her arms over the casserole. "They were authorized." "Not by me," I replied. "Any further attempt to access my accounts will be reported." Something in her expression changed. Then not panic, not guilt, but a quiet calculation I hadn't seen before. A hardness. She shifted the casserole in her hands. "I should go," she said. I nodded once. She walked back down the driveway, the dish still clutched to her chest. I closed the door gently, feeling the finality settle behind it. The phone rang just after sunset, when the house was quiet enough for my thoughts to echo. I almost didn't pick up, but when I saw Ty's name, I answered immediately. "Grandma." His voice was low, uncertain. "I'm here," I said. There was a pause, the kind that fills itself with everything left unsaid. I need to tell you something. I should have said it earlier, but I wasn't sure if it mattered. Now I think it does." My hand tightened around the receiver. "Go ahead, sweetheart." "I heard Mom and Dad talking after you arrived on Christmas," he said quietly. "They were in the kitchen. They didn't know I was nearby." Another pause, and then a small click, followed by muffled whispers. Ty was playing something. First came Jolene's voice, thin and sharp. She wasn't supposed to switch the cups. Everything was lined up. Then Richard, sounding tired or resigned or both. "We'll try again." "She won't fight it." The recording ended abruptly. The silence that followed felt thick enough to touch. I drew in a slow breath. Not surprised, just confirmed. "I'm sorry," Ty said. "I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't want to make it worse." "You didn't," I told him. "You told me when you were ready." He exhaled shakily. "Dad's been strange. He keeps saying you're confused lately, that you're forgetting things. Mom repeats it like it's fact." I closed my eyes. The script was clearer now than ever. "Thank you for telling me. I didn't want them to hurt you," he whispered. "They won't." I said steadier than I felt. "Not anymore." We talked a little longer, nothing heavy, just enough to let him know I was still anchored. After he hung up, I sat at the table and slipped the recording into the growing folder beside me. The tea, the document, the money, the whispers. It all aligned now as cleanly as numbers on a ledger. And for the first time in a long time, I felt sharp. Sharp enough to take the next step. Daniel slid the final document across the desk. His office smelled faintly of ink and leather, but it was the clarity on the paper in front of me that brought the greatest calm. "All set," he said. "Jolene's authority is officially revoked. Richard's share is conditional. Ty is listed as primary beneficiary, and the trust is airtight." I nodded, once firm. "Let's include the letter, too." He reached for the envelope he'd prepared. It outlined everything, the legal changes, the reasons behind them, the evidence I had in hand, calm, factual, and final. I signed each page without rush. No second guessing, no tremor in my hand. Daniel watched me for a moment. You've handled this with more grace than most." It wasn't grace, I said. It was necessary. When I stepped outside, the air was cold but dry, and the sky above the courthouse had cleared into a wide, pale blue. The wind touched my face gently as I walked to the car, and for the first time in weeks, my shoulders didn't feel like they carried someone else's weight. Back home, I pulled open the old filing cabinet in the guest bedroom and began reorganizing. Every withdrawal, every statement, every notarized form sorted by date. I labeled folders clearly not for drama, but for record, for truth, for myself. Later that afternoon, I sat with a pen and a fresh sheet of paper. I began writing to Ty, not out of sentiment, but out of clarity. I wanted him to understand why things were shifting, why I was protecting what I had, why I was protecting him. I didn't dress it up. I didn't need to. By the time the sun went down, I'd finished dinner simple, warm enough. No noise in the house, no messages to decode, no one watching my every move. Just me and the quiet. That night, I slept without interruption. No dreams, no doubt. 2 days after Daniel sent the letter, my phone rang. The screen lit up with Richard's name. I answered. "Mom," he started, voice tight. "You could have talked to us. Before all this." I kept my tone even. "I did talk to you. For years. You just weren't listening." He went quiet. Not defensive, not apologetic, just suspended in that middle ground he's always preferred. I didn't know about everything he said after a pause. "But you didn't ask either." There wasn't anger in my voice, just finality. The kind that makes someone realize the bridge they thought they could walk back across is already gone. He sighed a tired sound and hung up. Later that evening, Jolene's calls started. First, a voicemail sharp with disbelief accusation, layered under faux concern. By the third message, she was crying, or trying to. By the sixth, her tone was flat and clipped. I didn't listen to any of them. I just watched the notifications come and go, each one proving how quickly control can turn into desperation when the grip slips. Instead, I drove to the community center on Ashwood Avenue and signed up for 2 classes watercolor on Mondays and memoir writing on Thursdays. The woman at the desk smiled when I told her my name and handed me the schedule. That night, I started going through the old photo boxes Harold and I kept in the attic. I sorted them into piles, family, travel, forgotten faces. I kept only what still felt like mine. Outside, winter rolled on as if nothing had changed. But inside my house, inside my routine, things were rearranging in quiet, firm ways. Days passed. Then a week. No more calls, no more messages, not even a postcard apology. And somehow, that silence felt like the most honest thing Jolene had ever given me. I didn't grieve it. I just made tea, opened a new book, and let the quiet settle like sunlight through the blinds. Ty arrived just before noon, his backpack slung over one shoulder and a grocery bag in his hand. "I brought you that tea you like," he said, grinning. I smiled, took it, and set it on the counter. "I've got something for you, too." I brought out the folder from the cabinet, the one with Daniel's clean printouts and updated seals. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight catching the edge of the paper as I flipped it open. "This is the trust," I said. "The house will be yours one day." Ty blinked, then sat up straighter. "Mine?" I nodded. "It's in writing now. Everything's secure. I just wanted you to see it to understand it." He looked down at the documents, running his fingers lightly over the top page. "I'll take care of it," he said quietly. "I promise." We didn't rush through the rest. I explained things plainly, not just the legal parts, but the parts that had no signature. Why the change was necessary. Why I couldn't leave it to silence anymore. Why his father's absence in this decision wasn't an accident. Ty didn't interrupt. He listened the way some people pray, with stillness and full attention. Steady. Calm. So unlike Richard, who always needed to prove something before he understood anything. Later, we walked the property together. The backyard fence needed repainting. The garden beds would need replanting soon. I pointed out the spot where the shed roof sagged and told him I wanted to replace it before the summer storms came. He helped me fix the loose step on the porch, holding the board while I drilled it back in place. His hands had grown since last year. So had something else in him, a patience maybe, a quiet respect. As we worked, I felt a stillness come over me. Not resignation, not grief, but something like peace. Not because I was letting go, but because I was choosing where to place what mattered. Summer arrived early that year, quiet and golden. I woke before the sun most mornings now, not out of worry, but out of habit, and brewed my coffee while the house still felt cool. The porch had become my favorite place again. I sat there barefoot, listening to the early rustle of leaves and the hum of life waking up around me. There was no rush anymore. No tension creeping in from unspoken threats or unasked questions. Just the slow unfolding of a day I got to decide. Time messaged often short, thoughtful updates from school. This time, it was a photo of a woodshop project and a note. Use the same finish as the porch. Thought you'd like that. I smiled and typed back, looks solid. Just like you. I hadn't heard from Richard or Jolene since spring. Word reached me through a mutual acquaintance that they'd moved west somewhere near Denver. No forwarding address, no calls, no birthdays missed because there were none left to miss. Then one morning, a letter arrived. The handwriting was familiar, but careful, like she'd practiced it again and again before setting pen to paper. The return address was one I didn't recognize. Jolene's words danced around apology, soft, vague phrases like, I miss what we used to be, and I hope you're well. She didn't name the things she'd done. She didn't mention the tea or the money or the silence that followed. I read it twice. Then I filed it away just as calmly as I had handled everything else. The rest of the day passed gently. I tended the garden, joined Nancy from next door for a walk around the block, and came home to rearrange the spare room into something new, a painting studio sunlight catching on the empty easel I'd finally brought down from the attic. That evening, I stood by the kitchen window as the sky turned from rose to ash, the stillness of dusk wrapping around the house like it belonged here. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I did too.